Penguin Random House Audio presents One Day, the extraordinary story of an ordinary 24 hours in America, by Gene Weingarten. Read for you by Jonathan McLean. Introduction. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. William Blake, Auguries of Innocence. At 2:05 p.m. on Thursday, December 13th, 2012, I sent an email to Tom Schroeder, my friend and editor. It said, in its entirety, "I wonder what happened on May 17th, 1957. The phone rang. It was Tom. "That's a good idea," he said. If it doesn't sound like an idea to you, much less a good one, it's because you lack context. Tom and I were forever bouncing off each other ambitious concepts for our next book. We usually trashed them, for kindness' sake. Between us, Tom and I had written 7 books, only 2 of which, one apiece, had even approached commercial success. The business model for the book publishing industry resembles the business model for 19th century oil well wildcatters. That is to say, it is an economy of informed guesswork. Most books are financial failures, but the rare hit becomes a gusher and underwrites all the dry holes. This may keep the publishing industry afloat, but it wreaks hell on writers' egos. With book ideas, friends don't let friends get too enthusiastic. But Tom liked this idea and understood it implicitly. Select an ordinary day at random. Report it deeply. Then tell it like it happened. From midnight to midnight. The most basic, irreducible unit of human experience. Ideally, the more you'd learn, the more firmly you'd establish that in life, there's no such thing as ordinary. Also, that in the events of a single day, in that telltale grain of sand, you would find embedded in microcosm all of the grand themes in what hacks and academics tend to call the human experience. It was a stunt at its heart. But I like stunts, particularly if they can illuminate unexpected truths. The magazine story for which I am best known involved placing Joshua Bell, the renowned violinist, outside a metro stop in downtown Washington, D.C., at rush hour incognito. In jeans, a polo shirt, and a baseball cap, for 3/4 of an hour on his priceless Stradivarius, Bell played timeless music, masterpieces by Bach and Schubert and Massenet, with a violin case at his feet, open for handouts, seeded with petty change. Would anyone notice the extraordinary beauty that was happening 20 feet away? Few did. Most people hurried by, as if the fiddler in the subway were a nuisance to be avoided. What happened that day became a story not about our taste and sophistication, but about our priorities. Have we so overprogrammed our lives that it is impossible to experience unscheduled awe? How many other worthy things are we racing past? The stunt of reporting an ordinary day would also test a journalistic conceit I embrace. That if you have the patience to find it, and the skill to tell it, there's a story behind everyone and everything. That although great matters make for strong narratives, power can also lurk in the latent and mundane. As the Sunday features editor at the Washington Post, I once assigned 5 writers to each hammer a nail into the phone book and do a profile of whomever the nail stopped at. It was a wild stab, literally, and it hit a vital organ. We got 5 compelling stories. One Christmas, I summoned 4 of the best writers at the Post and sent them off in different directions, one north, one south, one east, one west, with instructions to walk no farther than 7 blocks and bring me back a good Christmas story. If you don't find one, I said, you may as well not return. They all came back, and collectively, They pulled off a Christmas miracle. The most important book of my teenaged years, the one that really changed the way I thought about things, was Flatland, an obscure 1884 work of science fiction and social satire written by an unassuming English schoolmaster and theologian named Edwin Abbott Abbott. The man with the eccentric name wrote what may well be the most eccentric book of his generation, a slender, crudely illustrated novella set in a two-dimensional world inhabited by sentient geometric figures. The narrator, a square, is visited one day by a sphere. Initially, the square sees this three-dimensional being only as a circle of rapidly changing diameter. This is because a sphere, arriving from above and descending into and through the two-dimensional plane in which the square lives, would fluctuate in circumference depending on the diameter of the portion of the sphere that happens to be intersecting the flat plane as a circle at any particular moment. There will be no more math. The sphere is received as something of a deity. He has selected the square to be his disciple and prophet. He would show the square the existence of a third dimension and then send him back to his land to spread the news as gospel. Thus, the sphere elevates the square above flatland into spaceland, so he can look down and see his circumscribed, unlovely world with disturbing new clarity. A despotic, socially rigid, class-obsessed aristocracy, even further diminished by the startling knowledge of an entirely new, seemingly limitless dimension of existence. Back in Flatland, the square's excited vision of Spaceland seemed to others not like science, but like faith, since such a thing could not be demonstrated or even adequately explained within the context of a two-dimensional world. In the end, the square was punished for his insights because they challenged accepted dogma. He was Galileo, but he did not bend. He became a martyr for truth. It's a charming little book and considerably deeper than it seems. It anticipates relativity and quantum physics. It explores the self-protective hypocrisy of organized religion, the suppression of inconvenient thought, and the ugliness of class oppression. But to my teenaged eyes, it was mostly about the possibility of heightened perception through heightened perspective, thinking outside the box. Our ordinary understanding of the world is myopic, limited not only by our imperfect senses and flawed powers of analysis, but also by the capricious nature of the news narrative we are presented with day to day and year to year. Fame is transient and shallow, and even the more reflective storytelling of historians tends to shine arbitrary spotlights. Significant events and meaningful connections go undiscovered. Hence, one day. But it would be one day presented both microscopically and panoramically, from deep within but also high above, able to see forward and backward in time, applying the added, illuminating benefit of that fourth dimension. What remained was selection of the day. And it had to be completely random. That is how Tom Schroeder and I came to be at the Old Ebbitt Grill, a stately Washington, D.C. oyster house at lunchtime on New Year's Day, 2013. We brought an old green fedora. Tom had suggested a dart thrown at a sheet of numbers, but I demurred. You can aim a dart. Even blindfolded and with the best of intentions, there'd be a feel of manipulation. So we went with the hat, into which we would crumple 64 slips of paper in 3 separate drawings. First, the 12 months of the year, then the 31 days of the month, and last, the 21 years to which we decided to limit the field, 1969 through 1989. We wanted a date far enough in the past to feel like history and have a future to explore, but not so far back that living witnesses would be hard to find. We'd left ourselves with 7,670 possible dates. The first draw was made by Oscar Southwell, age 11, who was dining.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?